An argument started at breakfast. It was not the first time. Mr. Vernon Dursley woke up early because of a loud owl noise from Harry's room. "Third time this week," he shouted. "If you can't control that owl, it must go." Harry tried to explain again. "She's bored," he said. "She wants to fly outside. Can I let her out at night?" "Do I look stupid?" said Uncle Vernon angrily. A piece of egg was in his big mustache. "I know what will happen if I let that owl out." He looked at his wife, Petunia. Harry tried to speak again, but his words were lost in a loud burp from Dudley, the Dursleys' son. "I want more bacon," Dudley said. "It's in the pan, sweet boy," said Aunt Petunia. She looked at her huge son. "We need to make you strong." Dudley was so large that he barely fit on his chair. He grinned at Harry. "Pass the frying pan." "You forgot the magic word," Harry said, feeling unhappy. This simple sentence made the family go crazy. Dudley gasped and fell off his chair. The whole kitchen shook. Mrs. Dursley screamed. Mr. Dursley jumped up, his face red and angry. "I meant please," Harry said quickly. "What did I tell you?" his uncle shouted, "about saying the M word in this house? But I warned you, do not mention your strange power here." Harry looked at his angry uncle and his scared aunt. "All right," Harry said, "all right." Uncle Vernon sat down. He was breathing very hard and loud. He watched Harry carefully. Since Harry came home for the summer, Uncle Vernon treated him like a bomb. This was because Harry Potter was not a normal boy. He was a wizard. He just finished his first year at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. The Dursleys were not happy to have Harry home, but Harry was even more unhappy.
He missed Hogwarts very much. It felt like a pain in his stomach. He missed the magic castle, his classes, and playing Quidditch, the most popular sport for wizards. Most of all, he missed his friends. Uncle Vernon locked all of Harry's magic things in a cupboard. His spellbooks, his wand, and his Nimbus 2000 broomstick were all gone. The Dursleys did not care if Harry could not practice Quidditch or do his homework. The Dursleys were muggles, people with no magic. Having a wizard in the family was a big shame for them. Harry did not look like the Dursleys. They were large and unpleasant. Harry was small and thin, with green eyes and messy black hair. He had a scar on his forehead. The scar was shaped like lightning. This scar made Harry very special, even for a wizard. It was from his past. 11 years ago, the most evil wizard, Lord Voldemort, tried to kill Harry. Harry's parents died, but Harry lived. The attack only left the scar. When Voldemort failed to kill Harry, his own power was destroyed. No one knows why. So Harry grew up with his Aunt Nubble. For 10 years, he did not know why strange things always happened around him. A rich man and his wife, the Masons, were coming for dinner. Uncle Vernon wanted to sell them his company's drills. He made a plan. "Petunia, you will be in the lounge," he said. "Dudley, you will open the door." "And you?" he said to Harry. "I'll be in my room. I will make no noise and pretend I'm not here," Harry said. "Exactly," said Uncle Vernon. Later, Harry went outside to the garden. It was a sunny day. He sat on a bench and felt very lonely. No cards, no presents, and he had to pretend he did not exist. He missed his best friends, Ron and Hermione. They did not write to him all summer. He wanted to use magic for once, to send his owl Hedwig a letter. But he couldn't. Magic outside school was forbidden for young wizards like him. The Dursleys were afraid of magic. That was the only reason they didn't lock him in the cupboard again. Suddenly, Harry sat up very straight. He was looking at the hedge, and the hedge was looking back. 2 enormous green eyes in the leaves. Just then, Dudley walked over slowly. "I know what day it is," he said with a nasty grin. The huge eyes blinked and vanished. "Today's your birthday?" Dudley sneered. "You have no cards, no friends. Do you even have anyone at that weird school of yours?" Harry felt angry. "I'm thinking hard about a magic spell to set that hedge on fire," he said. Dudley looked terrified and ran off.
Mom, he's doing that thing again.
Harry got in big trouble for this. Aunt Petunia knew he hadn't done real magic, but she was furious. She made him work all day. He cleaned windows, washed the car, and worked outside in the garden. His back ached. He was exhausted. At 7:30, Aunt Petunia called, "Eat quickly! The Masons are coming!" His dinner, 2 slices of bread and a piece of dry cheese. He ate it fast. "Upstairs, hurry," she said without even looking up. He went to his room slowly, closed the door, turned toward the bed, but there was a big problem. Someone was already sitting on it. Harry tried not to shout, but it was difficult. On his bed was a small creature with large, bat-like ears and green eyes as big as tennis balls. Harry knew instantly that this was the creature he had seen in the garden hedge that morning. The creature slipped off the bed and bowed so low that its long, thin nose touched the carpet. Harry saw it was wearing something that looked like an old pillowcase, with rips for its arms and legs. Hello," said Harry nervously. "Harry Potter," said the creature in a high-pitched voice. "So long has Dobby wanted to meet you, sir. Such an honor it is." "Thank you," said Harry. He wanted to ask, "What are you?" but he thought it was rude. Instead, he asked, "Who are you?" "Dobby, sir. Just Dobby. Dobby the house elf," said the creature. "Oh, really?" said Harry. This isn't a great time for me to have a house elf in my bedroom." He could hear his Aunt Petunia's fake laugh from downstairs. "You can't have met many decent wizards," said Harry, trying to cheer him up. Dobby shook his head. Then, without warning, he jumped up and started banging his head furiously on the window, shouting, "Bad Dobby! Bad Dobby!" "Don't! What are you doing?" Harry hissed, pulling Dobby back onto the bed. "Dobby had to punish himself, sir," said the elf. "Dobby almost spoke ill of his family, sir," he explained. "Dobby is a house elf, bound to serve one house and one family forever." Dobby shivered and said his family did not know he was here. He would have to punish himself later by shutting his ears in the oven door. "But why don't you leave? Escape?" Harry asked. "A house elf must be set free, sir, and the family will never set Dobby free. Dobby will serve the family until he dies, sir." Harry stared. Dobby then looked at Harry with wide eyes. "Dobby has come to protect Harry Potter, to warn him. Harry Potter must not go back to Hogwarts." There was a silence. "Oh, what?" Harry stammered. "But I've got to go back. Term starts on September 1st. You don't know what it's like here. I belong in your world, at Hogwarts. No, 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 Dobby squeaked. Harry Potter must stay where he is safe. If Harry Potter goes back to Hogwarts, he will be in mortal danger. Why? Said Harry. There is a plot, Harry Potter. A plot to make most terrible things happen at Hogwarts this year, Dobby whispered, trembling. What terrible things? Who's plotting them? Harry asked at once. Dobby just made a choking noise and banged his head on the wall again. Harry stopped him and asked if the plot involved Voldemort. Slowly, Dobby shook his head, but his eyes were wide, as if trying to give a hint. Before Harry could ask more, Dobby bounded off the bed, grabbed Harry's desk lamp, and started beating himself around the head with loud yelps. A sudden silence fell downstairs. 2 seconds later, Harry heard Uncle Vernon coming into the hall. Quick, in the closet, Harry hissed, stuffing Dobby inside and jumping onto his bed just as the door handle turned. What the devil are you doing? Said Uncle Vernon through his teeth. You've just ruined the punchline of my Japanese golfer joke. One more sound and you'll wish you'd never been born, boy. He then stomped out of the room. Shaking, Harry let Dobby out. See why I've got to go back to Hogwarts? It's the only place I've got friends. Friends who don't even write to Harry Potter? Said Dobby slyly. How do you know my friends haven't been writing to me? Harry asked, frowning. Dobby shuffled his feet. Dobby has them here, sir, he said. He pulled a thick wad of envelopes from his pillowcase. Harry could see Hermione's neat writing and Ron's untidy scrawl. Have you been stopping my letters? Harry asked. Dobby hoped if Harry Potter thought his friends had forgotten him, Harry Potter might not want to go back to school, sir. Harry made a grab for the letters, but Dobby jumped out of reach. Harry Potter will have them, sir, if he gives Dobby his word that he will not return to Hogwarts, Dobby said. No, said Harry, angrily. Give me my friend's letters. Then Harry Potter leaves Dobby no choice, said the elf sadly. Before Harry could move, Dobby ran to the door and down the stairs. Harry sprang after him and ran into the kitchen. His stomach disappeared. Aunt Petunia's masterpiece pudding was floating near the ceiling. On top of a cupboard crouched Dobby. No, croaked Harry. Please, they'll kill me. Then Dobby must do it, sir, for Harry Potter's own good. The pudding fell to the floor with a heart-stopping crash. Cream splattered everywhere. With a crack like a whip, Dobby vanished. The screams from the dining room started, and Uncle Vernon burst into the kitchen. He found Harry standing there, covered in pudding. Just as Uncle Vernon was trying to explain the situation to his guests, a huge barn owl swooped through the window. It dropped a letter on Mrs. Mason's head and swooped out again. Mrs. Mason screamed like a banshee and ran from the house, shouting about lunatics. Mr. Mason quickly followed. Read it, Uncle Vernon hissed, holding out the letter the owl had delivered. Harry took it. It was a formal letter from the Ministry of Magic. It said that a hover charm was used at his house that evening. It reminded him that underage wizards are not permitted to perform spells outside school. You didn't tell us you weren't allowed to use magic outside school, said Uncle Vernon with a mad gleam in his eyes. Well, I've got news for you, boy. I'm locking you up. You're never going back to that school. Never. Laughing like a maniac, he dragged Harry upstairs. The next morning, Uncle Vernon paid a man to fit bars on Harry's window. He also fitted a cat flap in the bedroom door so that small amounts of food. pushed inside 3 times a day. Otherwise, Harry was locked in his room around the clock. 3 days later, the Dursleys showed no sign of changing their minds. Harry lay on his bed, watching the sun sink behind the bars on the window, feeling miserable. The cat flap rattled, and a hand pushed a bowl of canned soup into the room. Harry, aching with hunger, drank half of it in one gulp. He tipped the soggy vegetables into Hedwig's empty food tray. The room grew dark. Exhausted and hungry, Harry fell into an uneasy sleep. He dreamed that he was on show in a zoo, inside a cage, with a card reading, "Underage Wizard." He opened his eyes. Moonlight was shining through the bars on the window, and someone was goggling through the bars at him, a freckle-faced, red-haired, long-nosed someone. Ron Weasley was outside Harry's window.
Run, Harry breathed. He crept to the window and pushed it up so they could talk through the bars. Ron, how did you... What the... Harry's mouth fell open when he saw everything. Ron was leaning out of the back window of an old turquoise car. The car was parked in the air. In the front seats, Ron's older twin brothers, Fred and George, were grinning at Harry. "All right, Harry?" asked George. "What's been going on?" said Ron. "Why haven't you been answering my letters? I've asked you to stay about 12 times. Then Dad came home and said you got an official warning for using magic. In front of Muggles." "It wasn't me." "And how did he know?" Harry asked. "He works for the ministry," said Ron. "You know we're not supposed to do spells outside school." "You should talk," said Harry, looking at the floating car. "Oh, this doesn't count," said Ron. "We're only borrowing this. It's Dad's car. But we didn't enchant it to fly." "I told you, I didn't do the magic," Harry said, "but it'll take too long to explain now. Look, the Dursleys have locked me up. I can't come back to Hogwarts, and I can't magic myself out because the ministry will think I did another spell." "Stop talking so fast," said Ron. "We've come to take you home with us." "But you can't magic me out either," Harry said. "We don't need to," said Ron, smiling and looking toward the front seat. "You forget who I have with me." "Tie this rope around the bars," said Fred. He threw the end of a rope to Harry. "If the Dursleys wake up, I'm dead," said Harry. He tied the rope tightly around a bar. Fred started the car's engine. "Don't worry," said Fred, "and stand back." Harry moved back into the shadows. His owl, Hedwig, was still and silent. She seemed to understand this was important. The car's engine got louder and louder. Suddenly, with a loud crunching noise, the bars were pulled completely out of the window. Fred drove the car straight up into the air. Harry ran back to the window. He saw the bars hanging a few feet above the ground. Ron pulled them up into the car. Harry listened, worried, but he heard no sound from the Dursleys' bedroom. Fred reversed the car as close as possible to Harry's window. "Get in," Ron said. "But all my Hogwarts things, my wand, my broomstick." "Where is it?" "Locked in the cupboard under the stairs, and I can't get out of this room." "No problem," said George from the front seat. "Move out of the way, Harry." Fred and George climbed like cats through the window into Harry's room. George took a normal hairpin from his pocket and started to pick the lock on the door. "Many wizards think learning Muggle tricks is a waste of time," said Fred, "but we think they're useful skills, even if they are a bit slow." There was a small click, and the door opened. "So, we'll get your trunk," whispered George. "You grab anything you need from your room and give it to Ron." Harry rushed around the room, collecting his things. He passed them out of the window to Ron. Then he helped Fred and George carry his heavy trunk up the stairs. Harry heard Uncle Vernon cough. Finally, they got the trunk to the open window. Fred and Ron pulled from the car, and Harry and George pushed from the bedroom. Inch by inch, the trunk slid through the window. "One good push," panted Fred. Harry and George pushed with all their strength. The trunk slid into the back seat of the car. "Okay, let's go," George whispered. But as Harry climbed onto the windowsill, a loud screech came from behind him. Then he heard the thunder of Uncle Vernon's voice. "That horrible owl! I've forgotten Hedwig," Harry said. He ran back across the room and snatched Hedwig's cage. He dashed to the window and passed it to Ron. He was climbing back when Uncle Vernon crashed the door open. For a second, Uncle Vernon stood in the doorway. Then he shouted like an angry bull and jumped at Harry. He grabbed Harry's ankle. Ron, Fred, and George grabbed Harry's arms and pulled as hard as they could. "Petunia!" roared Uncle Vernon. "He's getting away! He's getting away!" But the Weasleys gave one giant pull. Harry's leg slid out of Uncle Vernon's hand. Harry was in the car. He slammed the door shut. "Put your foot down, Fred!" yelled Ron. The car shot toward the moon. Harry couldn't believe it. He was free. He rolled down the window, and the night air blew through his hair. He looked back at the rooftops of Privet Drive getting smaller. Uncle Vernon, Aunt Petunia, and Dudley were all hanging out of his window, looking shocked. "See you next summer," Harry yelled. The Weasleys laughed loudly. Harry sat back in his seat, smiling widely. "Let Hedwig out," he told Ron. "She can fly behind us." A moment later, Hedwig flew joyfully out of the window and glided next to them like a ghost. "So, what happened, Harry?" said Ron impatiently. Harry told them all about Dobby, the warning, and the ruined pudding. When he finished, there was a long, shocked silence. "Very strange," said Fred finally. "So he wouldn't tell you who was plotting all this?" George asked. "I don't think he could," said Harry. "Every time he got close to telling me, he started banging his head against the wall." Fred and George looked at each other. "Do you think he was lying?" Harry asked. "Well," said Fred, "house elves have powerful magic, but they usually need their master's permission to use it. I think old Dobby was sent to stop you from coming to Hogwarts. It was someone's idea of a joke. Do you know anyone at school who has a problem with you?" "Yes," said Harry and Ron at the same time. "Draco Malfoy," Harry explained. "He hates me." "I've heard Dad talking about him," said George. "Lucius Malfoy was a big supporter of you-know-who." Harry was silent. Draco Malfoy always had the best of everything, so his family was probably very rich. Sending a house elf to stop Harry from coming to school sounded exactly like something Malfoy would do. "I'm glad we came to get you," said Ron. "I was getting worried when you didn't answer my letters." "Does your dad know you have the car?" asked Harry. No," said Ron. "He had to work tonight. Hopefully we can get it back in the garage before Mom notices." "What your dad do at the ministry?" Harry asked. "He works in misuse of Muggle artifacts office," said Ron. "It's his job to deal with Muggle things that have been enchanted. Last year, an old witch died. Her tea set was sold to a Muggle woman. When the woman tried to use it, the teapot went crazy and squirted boiling tea everywhere." "But your dad, this car?" Harry started. Fred laughed. "Yeah, Dad loves Muggle things. Our shed is full of Muggle stuff. He takes it apart, puts spells on it, and puts it back together. If he raided our house, he would have to arrest himself. It makes Mom crazy." "We'll be there in 10 minutes, said George, looking down. A pink glow was on the horizon. Fred brought the car lower. Harry saw fields and trees. They landed with a slight bump next to a garage in a small yard. For the first time, Harry looked at Ron's house. It looked like it was once a large stone pig pen, but many extra rooms were added until it was several stories high. It was so crooked that it seemed to be held up by magic. 4 or 5 chimneys were on the red roof. A crooked sign in the ground read, "The Burrow." Near the front door, there were rubber boots and a rusty cauldron. Some fat brown chickens were pecking in the yard. "It's not much," said Ron. "It's wonderful," said Harry happily, thinking of Privet Drive. They got out of the car. "Now we'll go upstairs very quietly," said Fred. "We will wait for Mum to call us for breakfast. Then, Ron, you come downstairs and say, 'Mum, look who arrived in the night.' She'll be happy to see Harry, and no one will know we flew the car." "Right," said Ron. "Come on, Harry. I sleep at the top." Ron suddenly went pale. His eyes were fixed on the house. Mrs. Weasley was marching across the yard. She was a short, kind-faced woman, but at that moment she looked like a saber-toothed tiger. "Ah," said Fred. "Oh, dear," said George. Mrs. Weasley stood in front of them with her hands on her hips. She looked at each of their guilty faces. She was wearing a flower print apron with a wand sticking out of the pocket. "So," she said. "Morning, Mum," said George with a winning voice. "Have you any idea how worried I've been?" said Mrs. Weasley in a deadly whisper. "Bed's empty, no note, car gone. I was out of my mind with worry. You wait until your father gets home." "I'm very pleased to see you, Harry, dear," she said, turning to Harry. "Come in and have some breakfast." She walked back into the house. Harry looked nervously at Ron, who nodded, and he followed her. The kitchen was small and crowded. There was a wooden table and chairs in the middle. Harry sat down and looked around. He had never been in a wizard house before. The clock on the wall had only one hand and no numbers. Instead, it had words like "time to make tea" and "you're late." There were stacks of books with titles like "Charm Your Own Cheese" and "1-Minute Feasts. It's Magic." The old radio had just announced a song by the popular singing sorceress Celestina Warbeck. Mrs. Weasley was cooking breakfast and throwing angry looks at her sons. "I don't blame you, dear," she said to Harry, putting 8 or 9 sausages on his plate. "Arthur and I have been worried about you too, but really, flying in a legal car halfway across the country, anyone could have seen you." She waved her wand at the dirty dishes in the sink, and they began to clean themselves. "They were starving him, Mom," said George. Mrs. Weasley's expression softened a little, and she started to cut bread and put butter on it for Harry. Just then, a small, red-haired girl in a long nightdress appeared in the kitchen. She gave a small squeal and ran out again. "Ginny," Ron whispered to Harry, "my sister. She's been talking about you all summer." "Yeah, she'll want your autograph, Harry," Fred said with a grin. He caught his mother's eye and quickly looked down at his plate. After breakfast, Mrs. Weasley spoke. "You're going to denome the garden for me," she told her sons. "They're getting out of hand again." "Oh, Mum." "You can go up to bed, dear," she said to Harry. "You didn't ask them to fly that car." But Harry felt wide awake. "I'll help Ron," he said quickly. "I've never seen a denoming." The garden was large. There were many weeds, and the grass needed cutting, but there were interesting trees and plants everywhere, and a big green pond full of frogs. "Muggles have garden gnomes too," Harry told Ron. "Yeah, I've seen them," said Ron. "Like fat little Santa Clauses with fishing rods?" He pulled a real gnome out of a bush. It was small and looked like leather. It had a bald head that looked like a potato. "This is a gnome," he said grimly. "Get off me," squealed the gnome. Ron held it by its ankles and turned it upside down. He started to swing it in big circles like a lasso. You have to make them really dizzy so they can't find their way back, he explained. He let go and the gnome flew 20 feet into the air and landed in the field next door. Soon, the air was full of flying gnomes. When they finished, they saw the gnomes walking away in a line. Just then, the front door slammed. "He's back," said George. "Dad's home." They hurried back into the house. Mr. Weasley was sitting in a kitchen chair with his eyes closed. He was a thin man with red hair, like his children. He wore long green robes that were dusty. "What a night," he mumbled. 9 raids. An old Mundicus Fletcher tried to put a hex on me." "Find anything, Dad?" Fred asked eagerly. "Just a few shrinking door keys in a biting kettle," yawned Mr. Weasley. "Like cars, for instance?" Mrs. Weasley had appeared, holding a long poker like a sword. Mr. Weasley's eyes opened wide. He looked at his wife with guilt. "Cars, Molly, dear?" "Yes, Arthur, cars," she said, her eyes flashing. Imagine a wizard buying a rusty old car and telling his wife he just wanted to see how it worked while he was really enchanting it to fly. "Arthur Weasley, you made sure there was a loophole in the law when you wrote it," Mrs. Weasley shouted. "And for your information, Harry, arrived this morning in the car. You weren't intending to fly." "Harry," said Mr. Weasley. "Harry who?" He looked around and saw Harry. "Good Lord, is it Harry Potter? Very pleased to meet you. Your sons flew that car to Harry's house and back last night," shouted Mrs. Weasley. "What do you have to say about that?" "Did you really?" Mr. Weasley asked eagerly. "Did it go all right? I mean," he said nervously, as Mrs. Weasley looked angrier. "That was very wrong, boys. Very wrong indeed." "Come on, I'll show you my bedroom," Ron muttered to Harry. They slipped out of the kitchen and went up a narrow, winding staircase. On the 3rd floor, a door was slightly open. Harry saw a pair of bright brown eyes staring at him before the door snapped shut. "Ginny," said Ron. "She's never this shy normally." They climbed 2 more flights of stairs to a door with a small sign that said Ronald's room. Harry stepped in. It was like walking into a furnace. Nearly everything was a bright shade of orange. The walls were covered with posters of the same 7 witches and wizards in orange robes, all waving from their broomsticks. "Your Quidditch team?" said Harry. "The Chudley Cannons," said Ron. Ron's magic wand was on top of a fish tank on the windowsill. His fat gray rat, Scabbers, was sleeping in the sun. Harry looked out the tiny window. Far below, he could see the gnomes sneaking back into the Weasleys' garden. He turned to Ron, who was watching him nervously, waiting for his opinion. "It's a bit small," said Ron quickly. "Not like that room you had with the Muggles." But Harry was grinning widely. "This is the best house I've ever been in," he said. Ron's ears went pink. Life at the Weasleys' house, the Burrow, was very different from life with the Dursleys. Their house was full of strange and unexpected magic, like a talking mirror and a noisy ghoul in the attic. But the most unusual thing for Harry was that everyone there seemed to like him. Mrs. Weasley always gave him extra food, and Mr. Weasley loved asking him questions about the Muggle world and how non-magical things worked. One sunny morning, about a week after Harry arrived, letters from Hogwarts came. He and Ron went down to breakfast. Mr. and Mrs. Weasley and Ginny were already at the kitchen table. The moment Ginny saw Harry, she accidentally knocked her porridge bowl to the floor with a loud noise. Ginny seemed to do this often when Harry entered a room. She dived under the table to get the bowl. When she came back up, her face was glowing like the setting sun. Harry pretended he didn't notice and sat down to eat the toast Mrs. Weasley offered him. "Letters from school," said Mr. Weasley. He passed Harry and Ron identical envelopes made of yellow parchment with green ink addresses. "Dumbledore already knows you're here, Harry," he said. Fred and George then came into the room, still in their pajamas, and got their letters too. For a few minutes, everyone was silent as they read. Harry's letter told him to catch the Hogwarts Express on September 1st. It also had a long list of new books for the coming year. Besides the standard book of spells, grade 2, they needed a whole collection of other books. The list included titles like Break with a Banshee, Holidays with Hags, Travels with Trolls, Voyages with Vampires, Wanderings with Werewolves, and Year with the Yeti. All of these books were by Gilderoy Lockhart. Fred finished his list and looked over at Harry's. "You've been told to get all Lockhart's books too," he said. "The new defense against the dark arts teacher must be a fan. I bet it's a witch." At this moment, Fred saw his mother looking at him and quickly became busy with his breakfast. "Those books won't be cheap," said George, looking at his parents. "Lockhart's books are very expensive." "Well, we'll manage," said Mrs. Weasley, but she looked worried. "We can probably get a lot of Ginny's things secondhand." "Oh, are you starting at Hogwarts this year?" Harry asked Ginny. She nodded, and her face turned bright red. She then accidentally put her elbow in the butter dish. Fortunately, no one saw this except Harry. Just then, Percy walked in. He was already fully dressed, with his Hogwarts prefect badge pinned to his sweater. "Morning all," he said. He sat down but jumped up again almost immediately. He pulled a gray, molting owl from under him. "Errol," said Ron. He took the limp owl from Percy and found a letter from under its wing. "Finally! He's got Hermione's answer. I wrote to her saying we were going to rescue you." Ron put the tired owl on the draining board, muttering, "Pathetic." Then he opened Hermione's letter. In the letter, Hermione wrote that she hoped everything went well with the rescue. She was very worried about Harry and wanted them to let her know he was okay. She also suggested they use a different owl for the reply, because she thought another delivery might be too much for Errol. Hermione mentioned she was very busy with schoolwork. This made Ron say in horror, "How can she be? We're on vacation." Finally, she said she was going to London next Wednesday to buy her new books, and suggested they all meet in Diagon Alley. "Well, that works out nicely," said Mrs. Weasley. "We can go and get all—" On Wednesday morning, Mrs. Weasley woke everyone early. It was time to go to Diagon Alley. She took a flower pot from the kitchen fireplace and offered it to Harry. It was full of glittering Floo powder. "He's never traveled by Floo powder," said Ron, seeing Harry's confused face. "Never?" said Mr. Weasley. "But how did you get to Diagon Alley last year?" "I went on the underground," Harry explained. "Floo powder is much quicker," said Mrs. Weasley. "But if you've never used it before—" "He'll be all right, Mom," said Fred. "Harry, watch us first." He took a pinch of the powder, stepped up to the fire, and threw it into the flames. The fire roared and turned emerald green. Fred stepped right into it, shouted, "Diagon Alley!" and vanished. After George also disappeared, Mrs. Weasley gave Harry instructions. "You must speak clearly, dear," she said. And be sure to get out at the right fireplace. And keep your elbows tucked in, Ron advised. And your eyes shut, added Mrs. Weasley. Trying to remember all the advice, Harry took a pinch of flu powder. He walked to the edge of the fire, took a deep breath, stepped forward. The fire felt like a warm breeze. He opened his mouth to speak, but immediately swallowed a lot of hot ash. Diagonal alley, he coughed. It felt like he was being pulled down a giant drain. He was spinning very fast. The roaring in his ears was deafening. The spinning green flames made him feel sick. Something hard hit his elbow. He closed his eyes, wishing it would stop. Then he fell face forward onto cold stone. He felt his glasses snap. Dizzy and covered in soot, Harry got to his feet. He held his broken glasses and looked around. He was alone in the fireplace of a large, dark wizard's shop. The things here were creepy and would never be on a Hogwarts school list. A glass case held a withered hand on a cushion. Evil-looking masks stared from the walls, and human bones lay on the counter. Through the dusty window, Harry saw a dark, narrow street. It was definitely not Diagon Alley. He needed to leave as soon as possible. As he moved toward the door, two people appeared outside. One was the last person Harry wanted to see right now, Draco Malfoy. Harry quickly hid inside a large black cabinet, leaving a small crack to see through. A bell rang as Malfoy and his father stepped into the shop. Mr. Malfoy had the same pale, pointed face and cold gray eyes as his son. "Touch nothing, Draco," he said. Draco complained that he wanted a present. "I said I would buy you a racing broom," his father replied. "What's the good of that if I'm not on the house team?" Malfoy said angrily. "Harry Potter got a Nimbus 2000 last year, special permission from Dumbledore. He's not even that good. It's just because he's famous for that stupid scar on his forehead." "You have told me this many times," said Mr. Malfoy sharply, "and it is not wise to seem like you dislike Harry Potter. Most wizards see him as a hero." "Ah, Mr. Borgin." A stooping man with greasy hair appeared. "Mr. Borgin, what a pleasure to see you," said Mr. Borgin. "I am not buying today, Mr. Borgin. I am selling," said Mr. Malfoy. The smile on Mr. Borgin's face faded slightly. "You know the Ministry is doing more raids," said Mr. Malfoy. "I have a few items at home that might embarrass me if they visit." He showed Mr. Borgin a list. "The Ministry would not dare to trouble you, sir," Mr. Borgin said. "Perhaps not," Mr. Malfoy said, "but they are becoming more meddlesome. There are rumors about a new Muggle Protection Act. No doubt that Muggle-loving fool Arthur Weasley is behind it." Harry felt a rush of anger. Draco interrupted, pointing at the withered hand. "Can I have that?" "Ah, the Hand of Glory," said Mr. Borgin. "A best friend for thieves." "I hope my son will be more than a thief, Borgin," Mr. Malfoy said coldly. He then added, "Though if his grades don't get better, that may be all he is good for." "It's not my fault," Draco argued. "The teachers all have favorites, like that Hermione Granger." "You should be ashamed that a girl with no wizarding family beats you in every exam," snapped Mr. Malfoy. Harry smiled to himself, happy to see Draco looking embarrassed and angry. Mr. Malfoy and Mr. Borgin started to haggle over the items on the list. Harry watched nervously as Draco walked closer to his hiding place. Draco stopped to look at a cursed opal necklace. Then he turned and saw the cabinet right in front of him. He walked forward and stretched out his hand for the handle. "Done," said Mr. Malfoy at the counter. "Come, Draco." Harry wiped his forehead with his sleeve as Draco turned away and left with his father. The moment the door closed, Mr. Borgin dropped his oily smile. "Good day yourself, Mr. Malfoy," he muttered. "If the stories are true, you haven't sold me half of what's hidden in your manor." Then he fell face forward onto cold stone. He felt his glasses snap. Dizzy and covered in soot, Harry got to his feet. He held his broken glasses and looked around. He was alone in the fireplace of a large, dark wizard's shop. The things here were creepy and would never be on a Hogwarts school list. A glass case held a withered hand on a cushion. Evil-looking masks stared from the walls, and human bones lay on the counter. Through the dusty window, Harry saw a dark, narrow street. It was definitely not Diagon Alley. He needed to leave as soon as possible. As he moved toward the door, two people appeared outside. One was the last person Harry wanted to see right now, Draco Malfoy. Harry quickly hid inside a large black cabinet, leaving a small crack to see through. A bell rang as Malfoy and his father stepped into the shop. Mr. Malfoy had the same pale, pointed face and cold gray eyes as his son. "Touch nothing, Draco," he said. Draco complained that he wanted a present. "I said I would buy you a racing broom," his father replied. "What's the good of that if I'm not on the house team?" Malfoy said angrily. "Harry Potter got a Nimbus 2000 last year. Special permission from Dumbledore. He's not even that good. It's just because he's famous for that stupid scar on his forehead." "You have told me this many times," said Mr. Malfoy sharply. "And it is not wise to seem like you dislike Harry Potter. Most wizards see him as a hero." "Ah, Mr. Borgin." A stooping man with greasy hair appeared. "Mr. Malfoy, what a pleasure to see you," said Mr. Borgin. "I'm not buying today, Mr. Borgin. I am selling," said Mr. Malfoy. The smile on Mr. Borgin's face faded slightly. "You know the Ministry is doing more raids," said Mr. Malfoy. "I have a few items at home that might embarrass me if they visit." He showed Mr. Borgin a list. "The Ministry would not dare to trouble you, sir," Mr. Borgin said. "Perhaps not," Mr. Malfoy said. "But they are becoming more meddlesome. There are rumors about a new Muggle Protection Act. No doubt that Muggle-loving fool Arthur Weasley is behind it." Harry felt a rush of anger. Draco interrupted, pointing at the withered hand. "Can I have that?" "Ah, the Hand of Glory," said Mr. Borgin, "a best friend for thieves." "I hope my son will be more than a thief, Borgin," Mr. Malfoy said coldly. He then added, "Though if his grades don't get better, that may be all he is good for." "It's not my fault," Draco argued. "The teachers all have favorites, like that Hermione Granger. You should be ashamed that a girl with no wizard family beats you in every exam," snapped Mr. Malfoy. Harry smiled to himself, happy to see Draco looking embarrassed and angry. Mr. Malfoy and Mr. Borgin started to haggle over the items on the list. Harry watched nervously as Draco walked closer to his hiding place. Draco stopped to look at a cursed opal necklace. Then he turned and saw the cabinet right in front of him. He walked forward and stretched out his hand for the handle. "Done," said Mr. Malfoy at the counter. "Come, Draco." Harry wiped his forehead with his sleeve as Draco turned away and left with his father. The moment the door closed, Mr. Borgin dropped his oily smile. "Good day yourself, Mr. Malfoy," he muttered. "If the stories are true, you haven't sold me half of what's hidden in your manor." Harry waited a minute. Then he quietly slipped out of the cabinet and left the shop. Harry stepped out of the shop and found himself in a dark alley called Nocturne Alley. The shops here were all for the dark arts, and he felt nervous. An old witch approached him, trying to sell him what looked like human fingernails, which startled him. Just then, a massive figure came toward them. "Harry, what d'you think you're doing down there?" It was Hagrid. Harry felt a great sense of relief. Hagrid pulled Harry away from the witch and led him out of Nocturne Alley, back into the bright sunlight of Diagon Alley. In the distance was the familiar white marble building of Gringotts Bank. "You're a mess," Hagrid said gruffly, brushing the soot off Harry. "Harry, Harry, over here!" Harry looked up and saw Hermione Granger running down the steps of Gringotts. Soon after, Ron, Fred, George, Percy, and Mr. Weasley came running up the street. "Harry," Mr. Weasley panted, "we hoped you'd only gone one grade too far." Mrs. Weasley rushed into view, looking very worried. She used a large brush to sweep the rest of the soot off Harry, and Mr. Weasley fixed his broken glasses with a tap of his wand. "I saw Malfoy and his father," Harry told Ron and Hermione, "in Borgin and Burke's." Mr. Weasley heard this, and his face became serious. Later, they all entered Gringotts. Mr. Weasley was delighted to meet Hermione's parents, and was very interested in their muggle money, pounds. They rode in a small cart driven by a goblin, speeding through the underground tunnels to their vaults. When the Weasleys' vault was opened, Harry saw only a very small pile of silver sickles and a single gold galleon inside. Mrs. Weasley swept all of it into her bag. Harry felt even worse when they reached his own vault. He tried to block the view as he quickly shoved handfuls of gold coins into a leather bag. Back on the bank's marble steps, the group separated to do their shopping. Mrs. Weasley told everyone, "We'll all meet at Flourish and Blotts in an hour to buy your school books." Harry, Ron, and Hermione walked along the winding, cobbled street. The bag of wizard money in Harry's pocket felt heavy, so he bought 3 large strawberry and peanut butter ice creams. They ate them happily as they wandered up the alley, looking at the fascinating shop windows. They met Fred, George, and their friend Lee Jordan in a joke shop. They also found Percy in a tiny junk shop, deeply focused on a boring book about Hogwarts prefects. An hour later, they headed for Flourish and Blotts. As they got closer, they saw a large crowd pushing outside the doors. A large banner stretched across the upper windows explained why. Gilderoy Lockhart was signing copies of his autobiography, Magical Me. "We can actually meet him," Hermione squealed with excitement. "He's written almost our whole book list." The crowd was mostly made up of witches around Mrs. Weasley's age. Harry, Ron, and Hermione squeezed inside. A long line of people went to the back of the shop where Gilderoy Lockhart was signing his books. They found the other Weasleys and the Grangers waiting in the line. Gilderoy Lockhart sat at a table surrounded by large, winking pictures of his own face. The real Lockhart wore robes of forget-me-not blue that matched his eyes. A short, irritable man was taking pictures for the Daily Prophet newspaper. The camera puffed out purple smoke with every flash. "Out of the way there," the photographer snarled at Ron. "Big deal," Ron muttered. Gilderoy Lockhart heard him. He looked up and saw Ron, and then he saw Harry. He stared, then jumped to his feet and shouted, "It can't be Harry Potter!" The crowd parted, whispering excitedly. Lockhart grabbed Harry's arm and pulled him to the front. The crowd burst into applause. Harry's face burned with embarrassment as Lockhart shook his hand for the photographer. "Nice big smile, Harry," Lockhart said. "Together, you and I are worth the front page." When Lockhart finally let go, Harry tried to move back to the Weasleys, but Lockhart threw an arm around his shoulders and held him tightly. "Ladies and gentlemen," Lockhart said loudly, "what an extraordinary moment. This is the perfect time for me to make an announcement. When young Harry came here today, he only wanted to buy my autobiography. I will now give it to him, free of charge." The crowd applauded again. "He had no idea," Lockhart continued, giving Harry a little shake, "that he would soon be getting much more than my book. He and his schoolmates will be getting the real magical me. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I am very proud to announce that this September I will be the new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher at Hogwarts." The crowd cheered and clapped loudly. Harry was given the entire collection of Gilderoy Lockhart's books. The books were very heavy. He managed to walk to the edge of the room where Ginny was standing with her new cauldron. "You have these," Harry mumbled, tipping the books into the cauldron. "I'll buy my own." "Bet you loved that, didn't you, Potter?" said a voice Harry knew well. He turned and found himself face to face with Draco Malfoy. "Famous Harry Potter," Malfoy sneered. "Can't even go into a bookshop without making the front page?" "Leave him alone. He didn't want all that," said Ginny. It was the first time she had spoken in front of Harry. She was glaring at Malfoy. "Potter, you've got yourself a girlfriend," Malfoy drawled. Ginny's face turned scarlet red as Ron and Hermione came over. "Oh, it's you," said Ron, looking at Malfoy with disgust. "Not as surprised as I am to see you in a shop, Weasley," Malfoy retorted. "I suppose your parents will go hungry for a month to pay for all those." Ron went as red as Ginny and started toward Malfoy. But Harry and Hermione grabbed his jacket. "Run," said Mr. Weasley, coming over with Fred and George. "Let's go outside." "Well, well, well, Arthur Weasley," a cold voice said. It was Mr. Malfoy, Lucius. He stood with his hand on Draco's shoulder, sneering in the same way. "Lucius," said Mr. Weasley, nodding coldly. Mr. Malfoy reached into Ginny's cauldron and pulled out a very old, battered book. "Dear me," he said, "what's the use of being a disgrace to the name of wizard if they don't even pay you well for it?" Mr. Weasley flushed with anger. "We have a very different idea of what disgraces the name of wizard, Malfoy," he said. "Clearly," said Mr. Malfoy, looking at Hermione's nervous parents. "The company you keep, Weasley. I thought your family could sink no lower." There was a loud crash as Ginny's cauldron went flying. Mr. Weasley had thrown himself at Mr. Malfoy, knocking him into a bookshelf. Heavy spellbooks came thundering down on their heads. Fred or George yelled, "Get him, Dad!" Mrs. Weasley was shrieking. "Break it up there, gents!" a loud voice boomed. Hagrid was walking toward them through the sea of books. He easily pulled Mr. Weasley and Mr. Malfoy apart. Mr. Weasley had a cut lip, and Mr. Malfoy had been hit in the eye with a book. He was still holding Ginny's old book. He pushed it at her, his eyes glittering with malice. "Here, girl, take your book. It's the best your father can give you." Then he grabbed Draco and swept out of the shop. "You should have ignored him, Arthur," said Hagrid, helping Mr. Weasley. "The whole family is rotten to the core." They hurried out of the shop. The Grangers were shaking with fright, and Mrs. Weasley was furious. "A fine example to set for your children, brawling in public," she said. "He was pleased," said Fred about Lockhart. He was asking that reporter if he could put the fight in his report, said it was all publicity. But it was a quiet group that headed back to the leaky cauldron to use the flu powder. After saying goodbye to the Grangers, Harry put his glasses safely in his pocket. It was definitely not his favorite way to travel. Harry's summer at the Burrow was the happiest time of his life. He was sad that it was ending. The next morning was very busy. Everyone woke up early, but they were still not ready. Mrs. Weasley was in a bad mood. She ran around looking for socks and quills. People kept bumping into each other on the stairs. They all got into Mr. Weasley's small Ford Anglia. The car was magically bigger on the inside, but they had to keep going back to the house. First, George forgot his fireworks. Then Fred ran back to get his broomstick. Finally, Ginny remembered she had left her diary. Now they were very, very late. Mr. Weasley— "No, Arthur," Mrs. Weasley said firmly. "Not in broad daylight." They reached King's Cross Station very late. They only had 5 minutes left. To get to platform 9 3/4, they had to walk through the solid wall between platforms 9 and 10. Mrs. Weasley looked nervous. "Percy, you go first," she said. Percy walked forward and vanished. Mr. Weasley, Fred, and George went next. Then Mrs. Weasley took Ginny's hand and they disappeared too. "Let's go together," Ron told Harry. "We only have a minute." They ran toward the barrier with their trolleys. Crash! Both trolleys hit the wall and bounced back. Harry fell over. Hedwig's cage fell and she shrieked loudly. Everyone stared at them. A guard yelled, "What are you doing?" "Why can't we get through?" Harry asked. The big clock showed the train was gone. "It's left," said Ron, stunned. "What are we going to do?" "Harry," Ron said. His eyes were shining with a new idea. "The car." "What about it?" "We can fly the car to Hogwarts." Harry was not sure. "But I thought— we're stuck, right? And we have to get to school," Ron said. "Even under it." "But your mom and dad," Harry said. "How will they get home?" "They don't need the car," Ron said impatiently. "They know how to apparate. They just vanish and reappear at home. They only use the car because we are underage." Harry's panic slowly turned into excitement. This was a crazy plan, but it might work. "Can you fly it?" he asked. "No problem," said Ron. "Come on, let's go. If we hurry, we can follow the Hogwarts Express." They pushed their trolleys through the crowd of muggles. They went out of the station and found the old Ford Anglia parked on a side road. Ron unlocked the big trunk with a tap of his wand. They put their luggage inside and put Hedwig on the back seat. "Check that no one's watching," said Ron. He started the car's engine with another wand tap. Harry looked out the window. The main road had traffic, but their street was empty. "Okay," he said. Ron pressed a tiny silver button on the dashboard. The car around them vanished. Harry felt the seat under him and his glasses on his nose, but he could not see his own body. He felt like he was just a pair of eyeballs floating in the street. "Let's go," Ron's voice said from his right. The car rose into the air. The ground and the dirty buildings fell away below them. In seconds, the whole of London was a smoky, glittering map under them. Then, there was a popping noise. The car, Harry, and Ron suddenly reappeared. "Uh-oh," said Ron. He hit the invisibility booster button. "It's faulty." The car vanished, then flickered back again. "Hold on," Ron yelled. He pushed his foot on the accelerator. They shot straight up into the low, woolly clouds. Everything became dull and foggy. "Now what?" Harry asked. "We need to see the train to know our direction," said Ron. "Let's go back down, quickly." They dropped below the clouds and looked around. "I can see it," Harry yelled. "Right ahead." The Hogwarts Express was moving below them like a scarlet snake. "Okay, hold on," Ron said, checking the compass. They shot up through the clouds again and burst into bright sunlight. It was like a different world. The car's wheels touched the top of the fluffy white clouds. The sky was a bright, endless blue. All we have to worry about now are airplanes, said Ron. They looked at each other and started to laugh for a long time. It felt like a wonderful dream. Harry thought it was the only way to travel. He imagined Fred and George's jealous faces when they landed at Hogwarts. For hours, they flew north. But after a while, the fun started to wear off. The toffees they ate made them very thirsty, and they had nothing to drink. Harry felt hot and sweaty. He missed the train where he could buy cold pumpkin juice. As the sun began to sink, the sky turned pink. The car's engine began to make a strange whining noise. Harry and Ron looked at each other nervously. "It's probably just tired," said Ron. "It's never been this far before." But the noise grew louder as the sky became dark. The car's windshield wipers moved very slowly, as if they were tired too. "Not far now," Ron said to the car, patting the dashboard. A little later, they dropped below the clouds again to look for a landmark. "There!" Harry shouted. Ahead of them, they saw the towers of Hogwarts Castle against the dark sky. But the car began to shake and lose speed. "Come on," Ron said to the car. "Nearly there." The engine groaned. Steam came from under the hood. The car gave a nasty wobble as they flew over the black lake. Ron's hands were white on the steering wheel. They were almost at the castle. Ron pushed his foot down. There was a loud clunk, and the engine died completely. "Uh-oh," said Ron. The nose of the car dropped. They were falling fast, straight toward the castle wall. "No!" Ron yelled. He turned the steering wheel hard and missed the wall by inches. The car flew over the greenhouses and the lawns, losing height all the time. Ron let go of the wheel and pulled out his wand. "Stop! Stop!" he yelled, hitting the dashboard, but they were still falling. "Watch out for that tree!" Harry shouted, trying to grab the wheel, but it was too late. Crunch! With a terrible noise of metal hitting wood, they crashed into a thick tree and dropped to the ground. Steam came from the broken car hood. Hedwig shrieked in terror. Harry had a painful lump on his head where he hit the windshield. "Are you okay?" Harry asked urgently. "My wand," Ron said in a shaky voice. "Look at my wand." It had snapped almost in two. The tip was hanging by a few splinters of wood. Before Harry could speak, a huge branch hit the side of the car like a charging bull. Another heavy branch smashed the roof. "What's happening?" Ron gasped. Harry looked and saw a branch as a python smashed the windshield. The tree was attacking them. It was alive and furious. Its branches were like arms, hitting every part of the car they could reach. "Urgh!" Ron shouted as another branch punched a big dent in his door. The roof started to cave in under the heavy blows. "Run for it!" Ron yelled, but a branch hit him with a vicious uppercut and knocked him backward. "We're done for!" he moaned. But suddenly, the car floor vibrated. The engine had restarted. "Reverse!" Harry yelled. The car shot backward, away from the angry tree's reach. The car, however, had had enough. With two sharp clunks, the doors flew open. Harry's seat tipped sideways, and he fell onto the damp ground. Loud thuds followed as the car threw their luggage out of the trunk. Hedwig's cage flew open, and she soared away with an angry screech. Then, dented and steaming, the car drove off into the darkness. "Come back!" Ron yelled after it, holding his broken wand. "Dad'll kill me!" He looked at the ancient tree, which was still moving its branches threateningly. "Of all the trees we could have hit," Ron said miserably, "we had to find one that hits back." "Come on," Harry said wearily. "We'd better get up to the school." This was not the triumphant arrival they had imagined. They were stiff, cold and bruised. They dragged their heavy trunks up the grassy hill toward the great oak front doors. "I think the feast's already started," said Ron. He quietly looked through a brightly lit window. "Hey, Harry, come and look. It's the sorting." Harry hurried over. Together, they looked into the great hall. Candles hovered in the air over 4 long tables. Golden plates and goblets sparkled. Above them, the bewitched ceiling showed a sky full of stars. Harry saw a line of scared-looking first-years. Ginny was easy to see because of her bright Weasley hair. Harry's eyes moved to the staff table. He saw Professor Dumbledore and the new teacher, Gilderoy Lockhart. Hagrid was there too, looking huge and hairy. "Hang on," Harry muttered to Ron. "There's an empty chair at the staff table. Where's Snape?" Professor Severus Snape was Harry's least favorite teacher. He taught potions and he disliked Harry very much. "Maybe he's ill," said Ron hopefully. "Maybe he's left," said Harry. "Or he might have been sacked," said Ron with excitement. "Everyone hates him." "Or maybe," said a very cold voice right behind them, "he's waiting to hear why you two didn't arrive on the school train." Harry turned around quickly. There stood Severus Snape. His black robes moved in a cold breeze. He was a thin man with sallow skin and a hooked nose. He was smiling in a way that told Harry they were in very deep trouble. "Follow me," said Snape. They did not dare to look at each other. They followed Snape into the castle and down a narrow stone staircase into the dungeons. "In," he said, opening a door. They entered Snape's office and shivered. The shadowy walls were lined with shelves of large glass jars. Inside the jars were many disgusting things. Snape closed the door. "So," he said softly, "the train isn't good enough for the famous Harry Potter and his friend Weasley. You wanted to arrive with a bang, did you?" "No, sir. It was the barrier at King's Cross. "Silence," said Snape coldly. "What have you done with the car?" Ron gulped. Snape then unrolled that day's newspaper, the Evening Prophet. "You were seen," he hissed. He showed them the headline. "Flying Ford Anglia Mystifies Muggles." He read aloud about Muggles in London and Norfolk who saw a flying car. 6 or 7 Muggles in all. I believe your father works in the misuse of Muggle artifacts office," he said, looking at Ron with a nasty smile. Dear, dear, his own son. Harry felt sick. He had not thought about Mr. Weasley getting into trouble. "I also noticed," Snape went on, "that you did serious damage to a very valuable Whomping Willow." "That tree did more damage to us than we—" "Silence," Snape snapped again. "You are not in my house, so I cannot expel you, but I will go and get the people who can. You will wait here." Harry and Ron stared at each other. They were pale with fear. Harry felt extremely sick. 10 minutes later, Snape returned with Professor McGonagall. She looked angrier than Harry had ever seen her. Harry stared at her. That now seemed like the obvious thing to do. I didn't think—" "That," said Professor McGonagall, "is obvious." There was a knock on the door. Snape opened it, looking happier than ever. Professor Dumbledore, the headmaster, stood there. Harry's whole body went numb. Dumbledore looked unusually serious. He stared down at them, and Harry wished he was still being hit by the Whomping Willow. After a long silence, Dumbledore said, "Please explain why you did this." It would have been better if he had shouted. Harry hated the disappointment in his voice. He could not look Dumbledore in the eyes. He told Dumbledore everything, but he did not mention that Mr. Weasley owned the car. When Harry finished, Dumbledore just continued to look at them. "We'll go and get our stuff," said Ron in a hopeless voice. "What are you talking about, Weasley?" barked Professor McGonagall. "Well, you're expelling us, aren't you?" said Ron. Harry looked quickly at Dumbledore. "Not today, Mr. Weasley," said Dumbledore. Snape looked like Christmas had been cancelled. "But I must tell you both how serious this is. I will be writing to your families tonight. I must also warn you that if you do anything like this again, I will have no choice but to expel you." Professor McGonagall told Ron he should go to the hospital wing for his bleeding cut, but Ron wanted to know about his sister. "The sorting ceremony is over," said Professor McGonagall. "Your sister is also in Gryffindor." "Oh, good," said Ron. "And speaking of Gryffindor?" Professor McGonagall said sharply, but Harry cut in. "Professor, when we took the car, term hadn't started, so Gryffindor shouldn't lose points, should it?" Professor McGonagall gave him a sharp look, but he thought she almost smiled. "I will not take any points from Gryffindor," she said. Harry's heart felt much lighter. "But you will both get a detention." It was better than Harry had expected. Professor McGonagall then raised her wand. A large plate of sandwiches and a jug of iced pumpkin juice appeared on Snape's desk. "You will eat in here and then go straight to your dormitory," she said. When she left, Ron let out a long whistle. "I thought we were in big trouble," he said, grabbing a sandwich. "So did I," said Harry, taking one too. After they ate, they left the office and walked to Gryffindor Tower. The castle was quiet. They reached the oil painting of a fat woman in a pink dress. "Password," she said. They did not know the new password. But then they heard hurrying feet. It was Hermione, dashing toward them. "There you are! Where have you been?" she asked. "Someone said you'd been expelled for crashing a flying car." "Well, we haven't been expelled," Harry told her. "You're not telling me you did fly here," Hermione said, sounding very serious. "Skip the lecture," said Ron impatiently, "and tell us the new password." "It's Wattlebird," said Hermione. The portrait swung open. A storm of clapping came from inside. The whole of Gryffindor House was awake, waiting for them. Arms pulled Harry and Ron inside. "Brilliant!" yelled Lee Jordan. "What an entrance! Flying a car right into the Whomping Willow." People were patting Harry on the back. Fred and George pushed through the crowd. "Why couldn't we have come in the car, eh?" they said together. Ron was red in the face, but he was grinning. Only Percy and Hermione did not look happy. Harry and Ron pushed through the crowd to the staircase for their dormitory. They finally reached their familiar, circular room. Their trunks were already there. Ron grinned at Harry. "I know I shouldn't have enjoyed that," he said. The door flew open and the other second-year boys came in. "Unbelievable!" beamed Seamus. "Cool," said Dean. Harry couldn't help it. He grinned too.
The next morning, Harry was not happy. At breakfast, Harry, Ron, and Hermione sat at the Gryffindor table. Hermione was reading. She was still upset that Harry and Ron had flown a car to school. Neville Longbottom greeted them happily. Neville, often forgetful, expected mail from his grandma. Soon, many owls flew into the great hall, dropping letters and packages. A large package hit Neville's head. Then a gray owl named Errol fell into Hermione's milk jug, splashing milk and feathers. Ron pulled out the unconscious owl. Errol held a strange red envelope in his beak. "Oh no," Ron gasped, pointing at the red envelope. To Harry, it looked normal, but Ron and Neville seemed terrified. They acted as if it would explode. Harry asked what it was. Ron whispered, "She sent me a howler." Neville urged Ron to open it quickly, explaining that a howler is a letter from home that explodes with a loud
angry voice if ignored. He said his own grandma's howler was terrible when he didn't open it. The letter's corners started smoking, proving Neville's words. Ron, with a shaking hand, took the envelope from Errol and tore it open. Neville quickly covered his ears. A moment later, a deafening roar filled the huge hall, shaking dust from the ceiling. It was Mrs. Weasley's voice, 100 times louder than usual, shouting, "Stealing the car! I wouldn't be surprised if they expelled you! You wait until I get you! Did you think what your father and I felt when it was gone?" Plates rattled as her voice boomed. Everyone in the hall turned to stare. Ron sank low in his chair, his face bright red with shame. Mrs. Weasley's voice continued. "Dumbledore's letter last night. Your father almost died of shame. We didn't raise you like this. You and Harry could have died." She ended with a powerful warning. "Disgusted! Your father is being investigated at work. It's all your fault. If you step out of line again, we'll bring you home." Silence followed. The red envelope dropped from Ron's hand and burst into flames, turning to ash. Harry and Ron sat stunned by the powerful message. Some people laughed, but slowly conversations restarted. Hermione looked at Ron, who snapped, "Don't tell me I deserved it." Harry felt guilty about Mr. Weasley's work trouble. Soon, Professor McGonagall gave out class schedules. Harry saw their first class was double herbology. Harry, Ron, and Hermione walked to the greenhouses for herbology. Hermione was friendly again, which was a good change after the howler. Near the greenhouses, other students waited. Professor Sprout arrived, with Gilderoy Lockhart. Professor Sprout looked tired, with bandaged arms from the Whomping Willow. Her clothes were usually dirty, but Lockhart looked perfect in his turquoise robes and shiny golden hair. "Hello," Lockhart called, smiling brightly. He boasted, "I just showed Professor Sprout how to heal a Whomping Willow, but I'm not saying I'm better at herbology." He said he'd met such plants on his travels. Professor Sprout, looking annoyed, announced, "Greenhouse 3 today." Students were interested because this greenhouse had dangerous plants. She unlocked the door. Harry smelled damp earth and flowers. As Harry moved to enter, Lockhart stopped him. "Harry, I need a word. You don't mind being late, Professor Sprout?" Sprout frowned, but Lockhart closed the door. "Harry, Harry, Harry," Lockhart said, his white teeth shining. He claimed Harry flying the car was all his fault. He thought Harry wanted fame, like him. "I gave you a taste for publicity, didn't I?" Lockhart said. "You wanted more." Harry tried to protest, but Lockhart cut him off. He lectured Harry, saying he understood Harry's desire for attention, but flying cars was wrong. He told Harry to calm down and wait until he was older for fame. Lockhart then bragged about his own achievements, like winning Weasley's Most Charming Smile Award 5 times, saying it was a start for Harry to be famous because of Voldemort. He winked and walked away. Harry stood confused for a moment, then went into the greenhouse. Harry quickly entered the greenhouse. Professor Sprout stood behind a long table. Many colorful earmuffs were on the bench. When Harry sat between Ron and Hermione, Professor Sprout said, "Today we'll repot mandrakes. Who can tell me about them?" Hermione's hand shot up. "Mandrake is a strong healing plant," she said. "It helps change people back to normal if they're cursed." "Excellent! 10 points to Gryffindor," Professor Sprout said. "Mandrake is important for many cures, but it's dangerous." "Why?" Hermione's hand went up again. "The mandrake's cry killed anyone who hears it," she quickly answered. "Exactly. Another 10 points," Professor Sprout said. "Our mandrakes are very young." She pointed to rows of small, purplish-green plants. Harry thought they looked ordinary. He didn't understand the cry. "Everyone take earmuffs," Professor Sprout instructed.
Students quickly grabbed pairs. When I say put them on, cover your ears completely. I'll give a thumbs up when it's safe to take them off. Right, earmuffs on. Harry snapped the earmuffs over his ears. All sound stopped. Professor Sprout put on her own earmuffs. She rolled up her sleeves, grasped a plant, and pulled hard. Harry gasped in surprise. No one heard him. Instead of roots, a small, muddy, very ugly baby popped out of the earth. Leaves grew from its head. It had pale green, spotted skin and cried loudly. Professor Sprout quickly put the mandrake into a pot, burying it in dark soil until only the leaves showed. She dusted her hands, gave a thumbs up, and removed her earmuffs. Our mandrakes are young plants. Their cries won't kill you, she said calmly, but they will make you unconscious for several hours. Keep your earmuffs on tightly while you work. I'll tell you when to pack up. 4 to a tray, pots are here, compost is in the sacks. And be careful of the venomous tentacula, it's getting new parts. She slapped a red plant and its long feelers pulled. A curly-haired Hufflepuff boy, Justin Finch Fletchley, joined Harry, Ron, and Hermione. He happily shook Harry's hand. I know who you are, famous Harry Potter, and Hermione Granger, always top in everything. Hermione smiled. And Ron Weasley, wasn't that your flying car? Ron didn't smile. He was still thinking about the Howler. Lockhart is amazing, isn't he? Justin said happily as they filled pots. Very brave. Read his books? I would have been terrified by a werewolf, but he was calm, just fantastic. Justin said he was glad to be at Hogwarts instead of Eton, as his mother now saw the use of a trained wizard in the family. After that, they couldn't talk much. Their earmuffs were on. They focused on the mandrakes. Professor Sprout made it look easy, but it was not. The mandrakes fought. They didn't want to leave the earth or go back in. They squirmed, kicked, and bit. Harry spent 10 minutes trying to push one fat mandrake into a pot. After mandrake class, everyone was sweaty and dirty. They hurried to Transfiguration. Professor McGonagall's class was hard. Harry felt he had forgotten everything. He struggled to turn a beetle into a button. Ron had bigger problems. His patched wand sparked and smoked, filling the air with a bad smell. He accidentally squashed his beetle. Professor McGonagall was not pleased. At lunch, Ron angrily hit his wand, calling it stupid. Harry suggested getting a new one, but Ron joked about another Howler. Ron was upset that his wand broke because of the flying car incident. Hermione showing off her perfect buttons from Transfiguration didn't help Ron's mood. Harry quickly asked about their afternoon class. Hermione said, Defense against the dark arts. Ron then noticed hearts outlined around Lockhart's lessons on Hermione's schedule, making her blush. They finished lunch and went outside to the cloudy courtyard. Hermione sat down to read. Harry and Ron talked about Quidditch. Harry then noticed a small, shy boy watching him. This was Colin Creevey, whom Harry had seen at the sorting ceremony. Colin had a muggle camera. When Harry looked at him, Colin turned red. Hello, Harry. I'm Colin Creevey, he said excitedly. I'm in Gryffindor too. Can I have a picture? He hoped to prove he met Harry. Colin knew all about Harry's past with Voldemort and his lightning scar. He said a friend told him his photos would move with a special potion. Colin was amazed by Hogwarts and wanted to send many photos home to his milkman dad. He asked if Harry's friend could take a picture of Harry and him together, and if Harry would sign it. Suddenly, Draco Malfoy's loud voice echoed. He stood behind Colin with Crabbe and Goyle. Signed photos? Potters giving out signed photos? Malfoy yelled to the crowd. Harry angrily denied it. Colin piped up that Malfoy was jealous. Malfoy sneered, saying he didn't want a scar and that getting your head cut open wasn't special. Crabbe and Goyle snickered.
Ron angrily told Malfoy to eat slugs. Malfoy warned Ron not to cause trouble, mocking Mrs. Weasley's howler. Slytherins nearby laughed. Malfoy then smirked that a signed photo from Harry would be worth more than Ron's family home. Ron pulled out his broken wand, but Hermione quickly warned them. Just then, Gilderoy Lockhart arrived, asking who was giving out signed photos. He then put an arm around Harry, saying, "We meet again, Harry." Harry felt very embarrassed as Malfoy smirked and disappeared into the crowd.
Lockhart beamed at Colin. "A double photo is best. We'll both sign it." Colin took the picture as the bell rang. Lockhart told everyone to move along and led Harry back to the castle, still holding him tightly. Inside, Lockhart gave Harry some advice. He said he covered for Harry with Colin, implying it would stop others from thinking Harry was arrogant. He ignored Harry's attempts to speak. Lockhart then told Harry that giving signed pictures now wasn't wise, even if Harry would need them later like him. He chuckled, suggesting Harry wasn't famous enough yet. Finally, they reached Lockhart's classroom, and he let Harry go. Harry quickly sat at the back, hiding behind Lockhart's books to avoid looking at him. Ron and Hermione sat next to him. Ron teased Harry about his red face and joked that Colin and Ginny would start a Harry Potter fan club. Harry snapped at Ron, not wanting Lockhart to hear about a fan club. When the class sat down, Lockhart loudly cleared his throat. Silence filled the room. He picked up Neville Longbottom's book, Travels with Trolls, and proudly showed his winking picture on its cover. "Me," he announced, pointing at the picture and winking himself. "Gilderoy Lockhart, a highly honored and famous wizard. I've won many awards, like the Witch Weekly's Most Charming Smile Award 5 times, but I don't talk about that." He paused for a laugh that didn't come, only a few weak smiles. He then claimed he didn't get rid of a monster by smiling. "You've all bought my books. Excellent," he said. "Today we'll start with a small quiz. Nothing to worry about, just to check how well you've read them." He gave out the test papers, then returned to the front. "You have 30 minutes. Start now." Harry looked at his paper in surprise. The quiz was 3 pages long, filled with questions about Lockhart himself, not dark arts. It asked things like, what is Gilderoy Lockhart's favorite color, and what is his secret ambition? It even asked about his birthday and ideal gift. After half an hour, Lockhart collected the papers. He quickly looked through them, making disapproving sounds. "Few remembered my favorite color is lilac," he said, sounding disappointed. He reminded them about details from his books and his desire for peace between all people, adding a wink. Ron stared at Lockhart in disbelief, while Seamus and Dean quietly shook with laughter. Hermione, however, listened to Lockhart with full attention. She jumped when he praised her. "Hermione Granger knew my secret ambition, to make the world evil-free and sell my hair potions." "Good girl. Full marks," Lockhart deemed. "Excellent. 10 points for Gryffindor. Now, to business." He then dramatically placed a large covered cage on his desk. "Be warned," he said, his voice deep and serious. "My job is to prepare you for the worst creatures. You might face your biggest fears right here, but remember, you are safe with me. Just stay calm." Harry leaned around his stack of books to get a better look at the covered cage. Lockhart placed a hand on the cover. Seamus and Dean had stopped laughing, and Neville was hiding in his seat, looking scared. "I must ask you not to scream," Lockhart whispered. "It might make them angry." The entire class held their breath. Lockhart quickly pulled off the cover. "Yes," he said with a flourish. "Freshly cut Cornish pixies." Seamus could not hold back his laughter, letting out a snort that Lockhart couldn't mistake for terror. Lockhart smiled at him. "They're not
Very dangerous, are they? Seamus choked. Don't be so sure, Lockhart said, wagging a finger. They can be very tricky little troublemakers. The pixies were electric blue and about 8 inches tall. They had pointed faces and high-pitched voices, like many arguing parakeets. The moment the cover was taken off, they began chattering and flying wildly. They rattled the bars and made strange faces at nearby students. All right, then, Lockhart said loudly. Let's see what you do. And he opened the cage. Chaos exploded. The pixies shot in every direction like rockets. 2 grabbed Neville's ears and lifted him into the air. Several flew straight out the window, showering the back row with broken glass. The remaining pixies destroyed the classroom faster than a rampaging rhino. They grabbed ink bottles and sprayed the class, shredded books and papers, tore pictures from the walls, and overturned the trash can. Bags and books were thrown out the smashed window. Within minutes, half the class hid under desks, and Neville swung from the iron chandelier. "Come on now, round them up, Lockhart shouted, but his words held no real command. He rolled up his sleeves, bravely waved his wand, and bellowed, "Pesky pixie, pester no me." His spell had absolutely no effect. One of the pixies smartly seized his wand and threw it out the window. Lockhart gulped, looking utterly helpless, and quickly dived under his own desk. He barely avoided being squashed by Neville, who fell a second later as the chandelier gave way. The bell rang, and students rushed wildly towards the exit. In the calmer moments that followed, Lockhart straightened up. He saw Harry, Ron, and Hermione near the door. With a casual air, he said, "Well, I'll ask you 3 to just put the rest of them back into their cage." He swept past them and quickly shut the door behind him, leaving them to deal with the mess. "Can you believe him?" Ron roared as a pixie bit his ear. "He wants to give us some hands-on experience," Hermione said, trying to find a positive side. She quickly froze 2 pixies with a clever freezing charm and put them back into their cage. "Hands-on?" Harry asked, trying to grab a mocking pixie. Hermione, he didn't have a clue what he was doing. "Nonsense," Hermione replied. "You've read his books. Look at all those amazing things he's done." "He says he's done," Ron muttered, the doubt clear in his voice.
For days, Harry tried to avoid Gilderoy Lockhart and Colin Creevey, who seemed to know Harry's schedule and loved bothering him. Hedwig was still angry about the car trip. Ron's wand kept breaking, even hitting Professor Flitwick on Friday. So Harry was glad for the weekend. He, Ron, and Hermione planned to visit Hagrid, but Oliver Wood, Gryffindor Quidditch captain, woke Harry very early for practice. It was still dark and misty. Wood was excited, explaining this was their new training plan to be first this year. Harry, cold and sleepy, found his robes. He wrote a note to Ron and headed to the common room with his broom. Just as he reached the exit, Colin Creevey rushed down, camera in hand. Colin Creevey eagerly followed Harry. He showed Harry a photo of Lockhart trying to pull Harry's image into view, but Harry's photo self resisted. Colin asked Harry to sign it. Harry, in a hurry for Quidditch practice, refused and left. Colin scrambled after him, excited to watch. He ignored Harry's warning that it would be boring. Colin was full of questions about Quidditch, amazed that Harry was the youngest house player in 100 years. Harry found it hard to get rid of Colin, who acted like a very talkative shadow. Colin admitted he didn't understand Quidditch, especially hearing there were 4 balls. Harry explained the complicated rules. There are 2 bludgers, which fly around trying to knock players off their brooms. Each team has 2 beaters with clubs to hit the bludgers away. Fred and George Weasley were Gryffindor's beaters. The quaffle is a large red ball used to score goals. 3 chasers on each team pass it and try to throw it through 3 hoops at the end of the field. The 4th and most important ball is the golden snitch. It is very small, fast, and difficult to catch. The game ends only when the seeker catches the snitch, which earns their team an extra 150 points. Harry was the Gryffindor seeker. Harry also mentioned the keeper, who guards the goalposts. Colin continued questioning Harry all the way to the Quidditch field. Harry finally shook him off when he reached the changing rooms, as Colin ran to find a good seat in the stands. The Gryffindor Quidditch team was already in the changing room. Only Wood, the captain, looked truly awake. Fred, George, Alicia, Katie, and Angelina were all... Wood quickly asked Harry why he was late. "I want to talk before we go out," Wood said. "I spent the summer creating a new training program that will make a big difference." Wood held up a large diagram of a Quidditch field with many lines and arrows. He tapped it with his wand and the arrows moved. As Wood explained his new plans, Fred fell asleep and snored. Wood took 20 minutes to explain just the first part, then showed 2 more diagrams. Harry felt his mind wander. "Is that clear? Any questions?" Wood finally asked. "Why didn't you tell us this yesterday when we were awake?" George asked. Wood was not pleased. "Listen," Wood said, glaring. "We should have won the cup last year. We're the best team. But because of things we couldn't control..." Harry felt guilty. He remembered being unconscious in the hospital wing for last year's final match. Gryffindor lost badly. Wood calmed himself. Their last loss still bothered him. "So this year we train harder than ever. Let's go practice our new ideas," Wood shouted. He grabbed his broom and led the team out. They followed, still tired. They had been in the locker room so long that the sun was fully up. Mist still hung over the stadium. Harry saw Ron and Hermione in the stands. "Aren't you finished?" Ron called. "Haven't even started," Harry replied, looking at their breakfast. "Wood's been teaching us new moves." Harry flew into the air. The cool morning wind woke. He loved being back on the field. He flew fast, racing Fred and George. "What's that clicking noise?" Fred asked. Harry saw Colin in the stands, taking many pictures. The clicking was loud in the empty stadium. "Look this way, Harry!" Colin yelled. Harry flew away from him. "What's going on?" Wood asked, frowning. "Why is that first year taking pictures? He could be a Slytherin spy." "He's Gryffindor," Harry quickly said. "And the Slytherins don't need a spy," George added, pointing. "Because they're here." Several people in green robes with brooms walked onto the field. "I don't believe it," Wood hissed, angry. "I booked the field. We'll see about this." Wood landed hard. Harry, Fred, and George followed. "Flint," Wood yelled at the Slytherin captain, "this is our practice time. You can leave." Marcus Flint, bigger than wood, cunningly replied, "Plenty of room for all of us." The Slytherin team, all boys, smirked at the Gryffindors. "But I booked the field," Wood shouted, furious. "Ah," Flint said, "but I have a special note from Professor Snape, giving Slytherin permission to practice, to train their new seeker." "You have a new seeker? Where?" Wood asked, surprised. Then a smaller boy, smirking, came from behind the Slytherin team. It was Draco Malfoy. Fred looked at Malfoy with dislike. "Are you Lucius Malfoy's son?" he asked. Flint smiled. "Draco's father gave the Slytherin team a gift." All 7 Slytherin players showed off their new shining Nimbus 2001 brooms. These were the newest model, much better than the old ones. Flint boasted that they easily beat Gryffindor's old clean sweep 5s. The Gryffindor team had nothing to say. Malfoy smirked. Ron and Hermione came closer. "What's happening?" Ron asked Harry, seeing Malfoy in Quidditch robes. "I'm the new Slytherin seeker, Weasley," Malfoy said proudly. "Everyone's admiring the brooms my father bought us." Ron stared at the amazing brooms. "Good, aren't they?" Malfoy said smoothly. "Maybe Gryffindor can get money for new brooms too. You could sell those clean sweep 5s. A museum might buy them." The Slytherin team laughed loudly. "At least no one on the Gryffindor team had to buy their way in," Hermione said sharply. "They got in on talent." Malfoy's smug look changed. "No one asked your opinion, you filthy little mudblood," he spat. Harry immediately knew Malfoy had said something terrible. Everyone reacted strongly. Flint quickly stood in front of Malfoy to stop Fred and George. Alicia shouted, "How dare you!" Ron pulled out his wand, yelling, "You'll pay for that!" He angrily pointed it at Malfoy. A loud bang echoed. A green light shot from the wrong end of Ron's wand. It hit him in the stomach, sending him falling backwards onto the grass. "Ron, are you all right?" Hermione cried. Ron tried to speak, but only a huge burp came out, followed by several slugs onto his lap. The Slytherin team laughed uncontrollably. Flint was bent over laughing. Malfoy was on his hands and knees, hitting the ground with his fists, laughing hard. The Gryffindors gathered around Ron, who kept burping large, shiny slugs. No one wanted to touch him. The Slytherin team laughed at Ron's slug problem. Harry and Hermione quickly led a struggling Ron to Hagrid's cabin, the nearest help. Colin Creevey, camera ready, tried to follow, but Harry pushed him back, upset by his fascination with Ron's illness. As they neared Hagrid's, Gilderoy Lockhart emerged. He was boasting loudly to Hagrid about simple magic and promised Hagrid a signed copy of his book. Harry quickly pulled Ron behind a bush to avoid Lockhart. Lockhart then left for the castle. Hagrid welcomed them inside, unfazed by Ron's slugs. He said, "Better out than in," and gave Ron a basin. Hermione worried about Ron's broken wand, saying the curse was hard to stop. Harry asked about Lockhart's visit. Hagrid grumbled that Lockhart gave useless advice. He also revealed it was hard to find a defense against the dark arts teacher now, as people thought the job was jinxed because no one lasted long. Ron, looking pale, finally explained Malfoy called Hermione Mudblood. He said it was a very insulting name for someone with non-magical parents. Pureblood families like Malfoy's believed they were better, but Ron stressed it meant nothing. Hagrid proudly stated Hermione a do any spell. After tea, Hagrid joked with Harry about signed photos, revealing he told Lockhart that Harry was more famous naturally. Hagrid then showed them his giant pumpkins, hinting he used magic on them, which was against the rules. It was nearly lunchtime. Back at the castle, Professor McGonagall found them. She gave Ron detention, polishing trophies with Filch, no magic. Harry's detention was with Lockhart, answering fan mail. Harry desperately tried to swap detentions, but McGonagall refused, saying Lockhart specifically requested him. Harry and Ron felt miserable. Saturday afternoon passed quickly. At nearly 8 o'clock, Harry reluctantly walked to Lockhart's office for detention. When he knocked, the door instantly flew open. Lockhart beamed. "Ah, Harry, come in," he said. Inside, countless framed photographs of Lockhart, many signed, shone on the walls. More lay on his desk. "You can address the envelopes," Lockhart told Harry, as if giving him a treat. "This first one is for Gladys Gudgeon, a huge fan." The minutes dragged. Harry mostly ignored Lockhart's endless chatter about his fans, just saying, "Mm-hmm," or "right." Sometimes he heard phrases like, "Fame's a tricky friend," or "Being a celebrity means acting like one." The candles burned low, and Lockhart's many moving photo faces seemed to watch Harry. Harry's hand ached as he wrote addresses, wishing it was time to leave. Suddenly, Harry heard something. It wasn't the candles or Lockhart's talk. It was a voice, chilling him to the bone, full of cold evil. "Come, come to me. Let me rip you. Let me tear you. Let me kill you." Harry jumped, making a large ink blot on the envelope. "What?" he asked loudly. "I know," Lockhart replied, thinking Harry was amazed by his book sales. 6 months at the top, broke all records. "No," Harry said quickly, desperately. "That voice." "Sorry?" Lockhart looked puzzled. "What voice?" "That voice that spoke. Didn't you hear it?" Lockhart looked at Harry in great surprise. "What are you talking about? Maybe you're tired. Goodness, look at the time. We've been here almost 4 hours. Time flies, doesn't it?" Harry didn't answer. He strained to hear the voice again, but there was only Lockhart's tearful voice. Lockhart told him not to expect such a treat every time he had detention. Feeling confused, Harry left. It was so late that the Gryffindor common room was nearly empty. Harry went straight to the dormitory. Ron wasn't back yet. Harry got into bed and waited. Half an hour later, Ron arrived, rubbing his right arm and smelling strongly of polish. "My muscles are all stiff," he groaned, sinking onto his bed. "He made me polish that Quidditch cup 14 times. And then I had another slug attack all over a special award. It took ages to clean off the slime. How was it with Lockhart?" Keeping his voice low, Harry told Ron exactly what he had heard. "And Lockhart said he couldn't hear it?" Ron asked, frowning in the moonlight. "Do you think he was lying? But I don't get it. Even an invisible person would have had to open the door." "I know," Harry said, staring at his bed's canopy. "I don't get it either."
October brought cold, damp weather to Hogwarts. Many students and staff caught colds. Ginny Weasley, looking pale, had to take a potion that made steam pour from her hair. Heavy rain fell for days, making the lake rise and Hagrid's pumpkins grow huge. Despite the weather, Oliver Wood's Quidditch enthusiasm remained. One stormy Saturday, Harry returned to Gryffindor Tower, soaked in muddy from practice.
It hadn't been a good session. Fred and George saw Slytherin's new, fast Nimbus 2001 brooms.
Walking along a deserted corridor, Harry saw nearly headless Nick, the Gryffindor ghost, looking sad. Nick was muttering about not meeting requirements. Harry greeted him, noticing Nick's fancy hat and tunic, which hid his almost severed neck. Nick looked troubled, holding a transparent letter. Harry said Nick looked troubled too. Nick sighed. "It's nothing important. I thought I'd apply, but I don't fulfill requirements." Despite his light tone, he looked very bitter.
Suddenly, Nick burst out, "You'd think getting hit 45 times in the neck with a blunt axe would let me join the headless hunt." Harry agreed. Nick angrily read from his letter. "We only accept huntsmen whose heads have parted company with their bodies. You do not fulfill our requirements." Nick fumed. "Half an inch of skin and muscle holding my neck on, Harry. It's not enough for Sir Properly Decapitated Podmore." After deep breaths, Nick calmly asked Harry what was bothering him. Harry replied, "Nothing, unless you know
Where we can get 7 free Nimbus 2001s for our match against Sly. Harry's words were cut off by a high-pitched meow. It was Mrs. Norris, Filch's thin, gray cat. "You'd better get out of here, Harry," Nick warned. "Filch is in a bad mood." But it was too late. Argus Filch, the caretaker, burst through a tapestry. He was breathing heavily, his face shaking, and his nose was purple. "Filth!" he shouted, pointing at Harry's muddy footprints. "Mess everywhere! Follow me, Potter!" Harry sadly said goodbye to Nick and followed Filch.
Harry had never been in Filch's office. It was a dark, windowless room, lit by one oil lamp. It smelled faintly of fried fish. Wooden cabinets lined the walls, filled with records of punished students. Fred and George Weasley had a whole drawer. Chains and handcuffs hung behind Filch's desk. He always wanted to hang students from the ceiling. Filch grabbed a quill to write Harry's punishment. He muttered angrily about frog brains and rat intestines. He unrolled a large piece of paper. Name: Harry Potter. Crime:
"It was only a bit of mud," Harry said. "To you, boy, it's mud. To me, it's an extra hour of scrubbing," Filch shouted. "Crime: dirtying the castle. Suggested sentence." As Filch prepared to write, a loud bang echoed from the ceiling. "Peeves!" Filch roared, throwing his quill down in a rage. "I'll get you this time." Without looking back, Filch ran from the office, Mrs. Norris beside him. Peeves, the school poltergeist, loved causing trouble. Harry didn't like Peeves, but he was grateful for the distraction. He sat in a worn chair, hoping Filch would forget him. On the desk, near Harry's unfinished form, was a shiny purple envelope with silver writing. Quick Spell, a correspondence course in beginner's magic. Curious, Harry opened it. The first page asked, "Feel out of step in modern magic? Find yourself making excuses not to perform simple spells? Ever been taunted for your poor wand work?" It promised an all-new, fail-safe, quick result, easy-learned course. Testimonials followed. Madam Z. Nettles wrote that Quick Spell made her the center of attention. Warlock D.J. Prod claimed he turned his wife into a yak. Harry was fascinated. Why did Filch need this? Was he not a real wizard? Harry was reading Lesson 1, Holding Your Wand, when he heard Filch returning. He quickly stuffed the papers back and threw the envelope onto the desk just as the door opened. Filch looked triumphant. "That vanishing cabinet was valuable," he told Mrs. Norris. "We'll get Peeves this time." His eyes fell on Harry, then darted to the Quick Spell envelope. Harry realized it was now 2 feet from its original spot.
Filch's pale face turned brick red. Harry braced for anger. Filch snatched the envelope and threw it into a drawer. Did you read? He stammered. No, Harry lied quickly. Filch's hands twisted nervously. If I thought you'd read my private, not that it's mine, for a friend. Anyway, Filch looked madder than ever, eyes wide and a twitch in his cheek. Very well, go, and don't breathe a word. Go now. I have to write Peeves' report. Go.
Amazed by his luck, Harry quickly left the office. Escaping Filch without punishment was probably a school record. Harry met nearly headless Mick, who thanked him for distracting Filch with Peeves' help. Harry was grateful for avoiding detention. Nick was still upset about his rejection from the headless hunt. He then invited Harry, Ron, and Hermione to his 500th Death Day party on Halloween. Nick nervously asked if they'd come, hoping Harry would also tell Sir Patrick how impressive he was. Harry agreed. Later, Hermione found the idea of a Death Day party fascinating. Ron, however, thought it sounded depressing. Harry soon regretted his promise, especially with the school's fun Halloween feast planned. But Hermione reminded him of his promise. At 7 o'clock, Harry, Ron, and Hermione walked past the brightly decorated Great Hall and headed to the cold, dark dungeons. The passage to Nick's party was lit by dim, blue-burning black candles. Harry shivered, hearing a dreadful scraping sound like music. They found Nick at a velvet-draped doorway. He sadly welcomed them inside. When Harry joined Ron and Hermione, Hermione was excited about the Death Day party. "It'll be fascinating," she said. Ron, however, thought it sounded depressing. Inside the common room, it was warm, despite the rain outside. Fred and George were trying to feed a firework to a salamander. Harry was about to tell his friends about Filch and the quick spell course, but the salamanders suddenly flew around, making sparks and bangs. This chaos made Harry forget about his earlier troubles. By Halloween, Harry regretted promising to go to the party. The rest of the school was excited for the Halloween feast, with its decorations and rumors of dancing skeletons. But Hermione reminded Harry, a promise is a promise. So, at 7 o'clock, Harry, Ron, and Hermione walked past the inviting Great Hall and headed to the cold dungeons. The hallway to nearly headless Nick's party was lit by dim, blue-burning black candles, making the air colder with every step. Harry shivered, hearing a dreadful scraping sound like music. They found Nick at a doorway with black velvet curtains. He sadly welcomed them inside. The dungeon was an amazing sight, full of hundreds of pale, see-through ghosts. Most drifted around a dance floor, waltzing to the shaky sound of musical saws. The air was freezing. Harry suggested looking around. Ron nervously warned not to walk through anyone. They passed various ghosts, including gloomy nuns and the cheerful fat friar. Harry noted that the Bloody Baron was avoided by others. Suddenly, Hermione stopped. "Oh no, turn back. I don't want to talk to Moaning Myrtle." Hermione explained that Myrtle haunted a girl's bathroom toilet, often flooding it with tantrums. Then Peeves the poltergeist appeared. Unlike other ghosts, he was bright and mischievous. He offered them fungus-covered peanuts. Peeves, seeing Hermione, slyly called out, "Oi, Myrtle!" Hermione frantically tried to stop him, but Myrtle floated over, looking sad. Peeves whispered to Myrtle that Hermione was talking about her. Hermione quickly lied, saying she was just saying how nice Myrtle looked. Myrtle cried, believing Hermione was making fun of her, mentioning names like Fat Myrtle and Ugly Myrtle. Peeves whispered pimply in her ear, and Moaning Myrtle burst into sobs, fleeing the dungeon with Peeves chasing her, throwing moldy peanuts. Nearly headless Nick then drifted over asking if they were enjoying themselves. They lied, saying yes. Nick proudly mentioned the good turnout and that it was almost time for his speech. Just then, a hunting horn sounded, and the orchestra stopped.
A dozen ghost horses, ridden by headless horsemen, burst through the dungeon wall. The crowd clapped wildly. Sir Patrick, a large ghost holding his bearded head, loudly greeted Nick, joking about his head still being attached. Sir Patrick then playfully startled Harry, Ron, and Hermione, making his head fall off, which the crowd found hilarious. Nick looked annoyed. Sir Patrick continued to tease Nick about not being in the headless hunt. Harry, at Nick's silent plea, tried to say Nick was frightening and impressive, but Sir Patrick just laughed. Nearly headless Nick tried to give his speech, but no one listened. Sir Patrick and the headless hunt started a game of head hockey, drawing all attention. Harry was very cold and hungry. "I can't stand much more of this," Ron muttered. Harry agreed. They quietly left the party. Harry was now very cold and hungry. "I can't stand much more of this," Ron muttered, his teeth chattering. Harry agreed, and they quietly left the party, walking back up the dark, candlelit passageway. Ron hoped pudding might still be available at the Great Hall. Then Harry heard it again. The same cold, murderous voice he heard in Lockhart's office. "Rip, tear, kill." Harry stopped, grabbing the stone wall, listening hard. "It's that voice again. Shut up," he urged Ron and Hermione. The voice whispered, "So hungry, for so long. Kill, time to kill." The voice grew fainter, moving upward. Harry, gripped by fear and excitement, stared at the dark ceiling. How could it move upward through stone? "This way," he shouted, and ran up the stairs into the entrance hall. The noise from the Halloween feast made it hard to hear, but Harry sprinted up the marble staircase to the first floor, Ron and Hermione clattering behind him. "Shh!" Harry strained his ears. From the floor above, fainter still, he heard, "I smell blood. I smell blood." Harry's stomach lurched. "It's going to kill someone," he yelled. Ignoring his bewildered friends, he ran up the next flight of steps, taking 3 at a time. He raced around the second floor, Ron and Hermione panting behind him, until they reached a deserted passage. "Harry, what was that about?" Ron asked, wiping sweat. "I couldn't hear anything." But Hermione gasped, pointing down the corridor. "Look!" Something shone on the wall. They slowly approached, squinting. Foot-high words shimmered on the wall between 2 windows. "The Chamber of Secrets has been opened. Enemies of the air, beware." "What's that thing hanging underneath?" Ron asked, his voice shaking slightly. As they got closer, Harry almost slipped in a large puddle of water. Ron and Hermione grabbed him, their eyes fixed on a dark shadow below the message. They all realized what it was at once and jumped back. Mrs. Norris, the caretaker's cat, was hanging by her tail from a torch bracket. She was stiff and still, her eyes wide and staring. For a few seconds, they didn't move. Then Ron said, "Let's get out of here." Harry awkwardly started, "Shouldn't we try and help?" But Ron cut him off. "Trust me, we don't want to be found here." But it was too late. A distant rumble told them the feast had just ended. Students were now pouring into the corridor from both ends. The chatter and noise suddenly died as the students saw the hanging cat. Harry, Ron, and Hermione stood alone in the middle of the corridor as silence fell among the crowd. Then, someone shouted through the quiet, "Enemies of the air, beware! You'll be next, mudbloods!" It was Draco Malfoy. He had pushed to the front, his cold eyes bright, his pale face flushed, grinning at the sight of the still cat.